Thank you very much, Sarah. It will be a great help to me and probably to you to keep that open. My name is John T, if we haven't met before, and it's my privilege to be examining that cheery text with us this evening. Let me pray. You know that we need God's help. Father, we thank you that that text is part of your living word. That's not only true, but good for us. And so we ask that tonight you'd teach each and every one of us what it means to live in your world in light of what you have planned for us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. A few hundred years ago, someone once said this: the unexamined life is not worth living. Anyone who says that? Socrates. Now, it wasn't just something that he said kind of while stroking his chin in his leather chair. This was something that defined his life and something that got him killed, actually. He went around ancient Rome disturbing the youth, teaching them to think and reflect about the greater things of life, and it annoyed the Roman leadership and it got him killed. But this is what he wanted to do with his life. He wanted for people to think, to reflect about the nature of life, and so to live differently. I think Socrates' heartbeat and Ecclesiastes' heartbeat beat together. Ecclesiastes just means the collector. And either this book is about someone who collects people to them, maybe a teacher or a kind of philosopher, or it means this is a collection of ideas. Either way, the writer wants to teach us how to think about life. And the writer says to us, look around, take your heads out of the sand and look at what's happening in this world. Read the paper, listen to the news, see what's on trending on Twitter, and what do you see? What do you learn? What do you think? What do you reflect on? The unexamined life, the unthoughtful, unreflective life isn't worth living. I had a neighbour in London who just never read the news or listened to news ever. And it's obvious why, because she found it depressing. She found that it made her upset and jaded and cynical about life, so she just never knew what was going on, never knew who said what, who started the war, where, just never knew anything. And I think kind of the heart of her concern is sometimes the people's concern with this book. The first week we looked at this book, we did question time afterwards. Hopefully we can do question time tonight. The second question came after we thought about the frustration and the futility and the kind of meaningless, apparently, of life. Won't this make us cynical, I was asked. Isn't this going to make us jaded? Especially when this book says the things that you think will make you happy but you don't have yet won't make you happy. Especially when you realize that even the most vital, most living of Christian faiths doesn't take away from the frustration of life. Aren't we just going to become cynical and bitter and twisted? Well, this book's kind of a book of two halves. The first half is kind of observation, looking out on the world, seeing what the world's like. The second half has a bit of observation, but a bit more reflection about how we do life in this world. And as we move through, an argument is building that even though life is tough, even though we can't sort out the difficulties of this life, we shouldn't get jaded. If we know the God of the Bible, we can't get cynical. And tonight we're going to have two more reasons why that's true. We're just going to look at them before we pause and reflect. And the first is this. We've looked at it already in Ecclesiastes, and we'll look at it again tonight. God will eventually judge. God will eventually judge. This section, starting in 8 verse 2, exhorts us to respect the power of human kings. Now, it's easy to forget how powerful an ancient king was, but at this time of year, we've got a very easy illustration of this. What's the most horrific story in the Christmas story? What's the most dark, horrific part of the Christmas story? Well, remember what paranoid Herod did when he realized there might be a rival to the throne. Again, we easily just gloss over this. He realized that Magi haven't come back to him. He's heard that another king's been born. He's utterly insecure in his power. So what does he command? The execution of every child under the age of 2. Think about that for a moment. Every child under the age of 2. Horrific. But there was no kind of outcry. There was no revolt. He commands it, and it happens. That's the kind of power ancient kings have. An utterly sovereign, utterly unopposed power. And the writer's saying, if someone has that kind of power is to be respected. We won't look at it in detail, but 2-6 says, that kind of power is to be obeyed and waited on and not annoyed, even if it's for a good cause, and not challenged, but treated with the respect that they're due. In verses 7-8, we have 4 proverbs talking about the power of the future and wind and death and evil. And the point is that all of these things is very powerful, and no one can stop any of these things. And the same is true of kings. Verse 9, all of this I saw, as I applied my mind to everything done under the sun, there is a time when a man lords it over others to their own hurt, as it says in the footnote. There are powerful people in this world who do horrible things to those under their power, and there's very little we can do about it. Wisdom respects that power. Now, while I think this has helpful applications for our anti-hierarchical society, there is a certain respect that we should give to power. I think this is going to help us think about how we relate to the king. The writer wants us to see that we need to respect the king of kings, the God who reigns and rules. But it can be hard at times, because at times it doesn't look like he's doing a very good job. The writer says sometimes he looks out on the world and he hears about another inquiry into sex scandals in religious contexts, when again we're told that the church knew about it but covered it up for their own benefit. And by the way, I'm not talking about the Catholic Church. Evangelicals have been caught up on this many times in recent history. And he says, verse 10, it looks like God tolerates hypocrisy. Then too I saw the wicked buried. Those used to come and go from the holy place and receive praise in the city where they did this. They're wicked. And yet in church they receive praise. The writer says, I looked out on the world and I saw this year alone 3,462 Christians killed in Nigeria, 3,000 abducted, and 300 churches attacked this year alone. And he's looking out on the world, in verse 11, it seems that God is lenient on crime. When the sentence on crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. If no one's going to stop me, then why shouldn't I? He looks out on the world, and some of his most godliest friends just limp through life, struggling with battle after battle, kind of upset and misfortune after upset and misfortune. When the selfish and the greedy and the immoral sail through life. And verse 14, it looks like God just doesn't really care. There's something else meaningless that occurs on earth. The righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. So as he looks out on life, life feels utterly, I've tried to say, I think meaningless is an over-translation, but it's utterly frustrating, utterly futile. In the ancient Near East, in these times, justice wasn't the domain of the judiciary system or the police. Justice was something that the king was responsible for, and sometimes when this writer looks out on the world, it looks like the king, it looks like he's got something else to do. It looks like maybe he's got a second job in the Caribbean, being a lawyer or something. It's utterly frustrating. It could make you jaded. It could make you cynical about life. It could make you wonder, is there actually a God ruling and reigning? but not for the teacher. Verse 15. Teachers able to commend the enjoyment of life. So there's nothing better than to eat and drink and be glad. And you think, how does that work? There are Christians being slaughtered in Nigeria, and you're just talking about eating and drinking and being happy. What kind of callous philosophy of life is that? But he can do it because of verse 12. Look down at it with me, please. Although a wicked person who commits 100 crimes may live a long time, I know that it will go better with those who fear God, who are reverent before him. Yet, because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. He says, I can get on with my job of eating and drinking and being glad and working. I know that God will do his job. The king will do his job. It will go better for those who fear him. It will not go well for those who don't. And their days will not lengthen. There is a king, and he does reign, and he will do what is right. That's his conviction, even though he can't see it. And I wonder if it's yours tonight. Verse 16 and 17 says there's going to be mystery. My goodness, there is mystery. There are going to be times when it just looks like the total opposite. But we're to respect his wisdom and respect his power, because he will judge. He will judge. And I believe that believing that will give you fresh resources to do life in an unjust world. I want you to cast your mind to Calvary, as the song put it. I want you to picture in your head a young man gasping for breath as he hangs, bloody, beaten, bruised, and broken. Naked, nailed to a piece of wood. This man is Jesus. And in your mind's eye, you're seeing the most horrific act of injustice ever committed. Innocence personified, executed like a common criminal. But as you look at his face, his grimaced, sweaty, tired face, he is silent. There's no outrage. There's no revenge. And the reason why is articulated just so beautifully in the words of one of his closest friends. Listen to these words. When they hurled their insults at him, Jesus, he didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. Jesus, the God-man, well, he could have done anything while he was hanging there on the cross. He could have stopped the very hearts of the people who were executing him. But he didn't. Even though he knew it was wrong, even though he could, because he had a deep conviction that God will judge, and he will judge justly. That God is the king. He rules and reigns. That, as the psalmist put it, God's throne will last forever. A scepter of justice will be the scepter of his kingdom. He loves righteousness and hates wickedness. And so we shouldn't be cynical. And so we shouldn't seek revenge. Because God will judge, the first point. Second reason why we shouldn't be cynical tonight. At this point, if your neighbour's just fallen asleep, now's the time just to give them a sharp nudge in the elbow or in the ribs. Because this is not going to be easy. But if there's one thing I want you to remember from this evening, it is this: that death is coming for us all. Death is coming for us all. It's not a comfortable thought, but bear with me, I think it's actually a good thought. The writer wants to remind us at the end of this next section of the passage, chapter 9, verses 1 to 11, of the nature of death. Is that me? Sorry. The nature of death. I'm not going to move my head. First thing, death doesn't care who you are. Verses 1 to 3. So I reflected on this and concluded that the righteous and the wise, what they do are in God's hand, but no one knows whether love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. Death doesn't care who you are, how good you are, how rich you are, how clever you are. It just does not care. Skip ahead to verse 11. Death doesn't ring ahead. I've seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, or the wealth to the brilliant, or favour to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. Moreover, no one knows when their hour will come. I'm going to go with this like a couple of weeks ago. I was just preparing for a sermon, and I had my head down, kind of thinking or reading or something, and I was just by my window, and I looked up, and I was face to face with an old friend that I hadn't seen for ages. It was terrifying, but basically she just decided to pop in, see whether we were here. Her and her 4 kids, they came in. It was just lovely. No announcement, no ring, no text. It's just typical of my friends, which just turned up. And so it is with death. It won't give you... By the way, this friend was lovely, actually. It was good to see her. So it is with death. But death isn't quite so welcome, is it? Sometimes it will give you a warning. But verse 11, whoever you are, however you've lived, sometimes it looks like life is governed by time and chance. And there's no greater picture of that than when it comes to death. Verse 12, no one will know the hour. Verse 13, we're like fish in a pond, picked out by a hook. Do you remember, I've just seen Toy Story recently, do you remember the green alien scene where the claw comes down? So it is with death. When it's our time, it will be our time, and there's nothing we can do about it. One day, my heart will stop. One day, someone's going to have to pick out a picture of me. Do you know those pictures that you get on the kind of funeral service kind of thing? A picture that kind of sums me up. One day will be your last. I wonder how you feel about that this evening. I pray that it's a long way off for all of us, but it is coming. And you smile because you know it's coming. But how often do we think of it? Never. But here's the thing. Given that death is the only thing that you know is going to happen in your life, you may or may not get married, you may or may not finish your course, but I know that everyone in this room will die. Given that life is short, you'll never have a chance again to do your stint under the sun. What does Proverbs say? Go for it. Make the most of your life. Leave it on the pitch. Go hard or go home. This is not a dress rehearsal. Make the most of it. Enjoy it. Go for it. Savor it. And it's a wonderfully positive message. Just look at the few things that he says. Verse 3b to 6, he says, go for your life. Verse 3, the second half kind of more literally reads like this. The human heart knows its full measure of misery and folly during life, and after it they join the dead. Life isn't easy, but, he says, a live dog is better than a dead lion. Alive, sure, it's better to be a lion, but a live dog is better than a dead lion. A live pauper is better than a dead prince. It's good to be alive because why? Verse 6, their love, their jealousy have long since vanished if they're dead. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. But verse 4, we're told that the living has hope. Who knows what the future might hold if you're alive? Who knows what God might have in store for you? You are on the stage of human history, and the world and the angels are watching. This is not a rehearsal. My question for you tonight is, what are you going to do with your life? The writer said, savor it. Savour all of it. Savour food and drink, verse 7. Go, eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Enjoy your food, he says. A cup of tea and a freshly baked slice of cake, crusty bread and prawns cooked in garlic butter, roasted lamb and a thick, juicy-bodied glass of red wine. Enjoy it, the taste, the smell, the texture. Enjoy that feeling that you can only get after a curry where you've almost eaten too much, but you haven't, and you're satisfied and you're happy. Enjoy it, feast. God approves of this. This is the second command that God gave to the human race, feast. God signed off on this. It's okay. He enjoys you enjoying it like a chef enjoys you devouring his creation. Enjoy food and drink. Enjoy celebration, verse 8. Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. At the very least, he's saying, look after yourself. This is not vanity, but have some dignity in your appearance. Wash regularly. Brush your teeth. Remember that song? Comb your hair. Put a little gel in your hair if that's your kind of thing. But more than that, he's saying, these clothes, white clothes and oil, it's about outward signs of joy. These are your glad rags, your going out clothes. He says always wear them, and you can't always wear your kind of special clothes, otherwise they're not special. The point is that we should have a kind of joie de vie. We should have a bounce, a joy in life. Occasionally that will be seen in our clothes of celebration. Enjoy your relationships, verse 9. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love. Enjoy your life with your wife, if you have one, or your husband. Time for a personal question. Those of you who are married, how's your marriage? How is your marriage? I take it that you can never associate your marriage with the words monotonous or drudgery or dull. Or maybe you can. It's easy for marriage to be consumed with schedules and decisions and diaries. And yet there are no dates or laughter or dancing or surprises. The writer says you only have, maybe dancing isn't for everyone, but the others can be enjoyed. You only have one wife or husband. You only have one life, he says. So enjoy it, enjoy her, enjoy your life together. When you got married, you didn't stop dating each other. You started dating each other, right? What have you done recently to inject some joy into your marriage? A bit of fun, a bit of laughter. It might cost you time or money or energy, but savour your lives together. I think this has implications for all of us, married or not. We need people in our lives who are our friends, who we can enjoy life with, who we can go out for food with and go for a bike ride with, go wild swimming with, talk on the phone with, laugh with, cry with. A joy shared is a joy doubled, right? If you don't have that, and many of us don't, work towards that, pray towards that. If you might have that, savour it. Who do you need to text tonight? Let's hang out. Savour relationships. I'm not saying this is easy. Look at the way he speaks of it. Enjoy life with your wife whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you on the sun, all your meaningless days. This is hard, and this is one of the areas in which life is particularly hard in our relationships. Marriage won't be easy. It's hard work sometimes, really hard work. Friendships are hard work. Families are hard work. They can be effort. But savour them nevertheless. As much as you can, they're a blessing. And finally, he says, savour work, verse 10. Whatever your hand finds you to do, do it with all your might. Maybe you're looking after kids at the moment, or a loved one. Maybe you're studying, you're in training, you're in a vocation. Maybe just doing a job just to make ends meet for a little bit. Do it and enjoy it and be thankful for it. Why? Not because the job that you've got is particularly fulfilling. I don't think that's what this is about. But rather because one day you won't be able to work anymore. And you do have a job. And it does provide you with some means of supporting yourself. Sometimes life feels so busy, doesn't it, and stressed and tricky that we forget how good it is to be alive. And I know it isn't always good to be alive. I know life isn't always amazing. I know that for many of us, there are long seasons where enjoying life is just a struggle. But just reflecting on my own life, I think life is often better than I think it is. It is good to have a to-do list, even if you don't complete it. It is good to have people in your life, even though sometimes they really wind you up. It is good to have reasons to celebrate. It's a wonderful thing to have food in the fridge and drinks in your cupboard and air in your lungs and blood in your veins. It is good, isn't it? It's good to be alive. And one day you won't be. So while you are, soak it up. Savour it. Leave it on the pitch. That's what Jesus believed, isn't it? That's what Jesus did, isn't it? Did you hear what Jesus' enemies said about him? Here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Here's my question. In order for that accusation to even be semi-credible, here is a glutton and a drunkard. What must Jesus' life have been like? At the very least, he liked a good meal, washed down with some local brew of some sort. Is that fair? His enemies said, look at his lifestyle. He's a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of sinners and tax collectors. He loves partying and he drinks too much and he eats too much. He can't have been accused of that if he just ate bread and water. He loved his food. He loved his life. He loved people who they didn't love. And they hated him for it. But that's what we are to be like. Are we ready to live? I think the writer's saying to us, we are not going to be ready to live until we're ready to die. Until we think about the fact that we've only got a few short years on this earth. And for many of us, that's terrifying. I think it's particularly terrifying if you don't know what's coming next. But you can know what's coming next, because there's someone who has faced death for us. There's someone who has beaten death for us. There is someone who's raised from the dead, victorious over death, that we might not die anymore if we trust in him, if we know his forgiveness, if we know his love. And if we do, then we can face death squarely, knowing that it's coming, and knowing that we've got a job to do, a life to live, ready to live before we die.